study plan. So give yourself ample time before a test, to be able to really understand how much material you need, how long you will need. So once you determine, for example, that your exams will begin in June, right? So you know when it will start. It's very important that you always start early and give yourself enough time to study. And it's important that you study on regular basis, right? So you could give yourself a few hours to study a day. But what is important is for you not to procrastinate and to be consistent, right, with your study. So you need to get all the material organized, get your space organized, bring everything together to give yourself an idea of the scope, right, of the quantity of material that you need to prepare for the exams, to have an idea across modules, what you really need to prepare for your specific exam or test. Just again to make sure that you don't leave out anything important. Now, before you start creating your study plan, there's certain questions that you need to ask yourself, right? How much material do I need to cover for this exam? You need to ask yourself that. How much material do I need to cover? For example, do you need to read 6 articles, 15 articles in English 101, in English 105, and maybe in your law module, in your elective module, you need to really think more broadly and not leave anything out, because if you leave anything out, then when you include that, you may find yourself short of time or not coping because it wasn't included in your study plan. So it's therefore important that you really think about how much material that you need to cover. The next question that you need to ask yourself is, what is the difficulty level of this material? Difficulty level, because if it's material that you understand, for example, you know that, okay, this could take me an hour or two, or I could study this for 1 week and revise and should be enough for exams. And the difficult material, you know that, okay, this could take me maybe 2 months for me to understand. So this means I need to start earlier. I need to include more study time. So the difficulty of the material is important. How much time do you have until this exam? Again, if you have 1 month left, then you know, okay, I have 1 month. So you can't make your study plan over 2 months, for example. Do you have any other priorities during your study period? The mistake that students sometimes make when they create their study plans is to not think about the fact that they are also sisters, they are brothers, they are parents, they are human beings, that have other responsibilities or priorities as well as studying. Then you make a study plan with only your study hours and lecture times, but you do not include that time that you take your younger one from school or your child from school. You do not include screen time where you're on social media watching your movies. You do not include exercise time, rest time, time to chill with friends and so on. So you need to really include, it needs to be not just studies, but a study plan is that which really captures your full day, your full self. That really enables you to see how much time you have left for studies and how much you need to maybe take out of your schedule. Perhaps time with friends needs to be reduced to 2 hours, or 1 hour 30 minutes, because there's so much to do, right? Then you need to think about the format of the exam, because if you're writing MCQs, as we did last week, we looked at how to address MCQs, how to study for MCQs. We see that it's different from studying for essays, right? So what type of exams will you be writing? Is it MCQs? Is it essays? That again, or are you just drafting a portfolio? That again will determine how much time you should include. How important is the exam to you? If it's important, then you will know you need to dedicate more time to it. And if it's less important, perhaps work is more important or family is more important. That again will help you to really know how much time you dedicate for each of these priorities in your life. What is your performance target? Again, will determine how much you include. If you are looking for an A grade and you have an hour of study before the exam, it may be difficult for you, for example, to achieve that. So the performance target is also very important when really establishing or determining how or to create or go about your study plan. Okay, so remember to stop me at any time if you have any questions. So once you have asked those questions, those questions will help you to know how to go about your study plan. Then the next thing you need to do now is to map out all the material that has to be covered, showing the what, the when, and the how much you will study each day. Now, this is very important. It's not just, enough for you to say, I was on Tuesday, I'm studying English, for example. You need to be able to know what you'll be studying that day, because trust me, it could take you up to 2 hours. It happened to me before. Just to determine what I'm going to do, I'm like, let me read this. And then I'm like, no. Then I zoom out. I start thinking about other stuff. And then I start reading something. And then I'm like, no, this is not going to work. Let me do this instead. You're just in confusion. And by the time you actually are able to do something, you have to move on to the next thing. You don't have time to study anymore. Maybe 2 hours is an exaggeration, but it could take a lot of time for you to really determine what to study for that specific hour. So it's important that when mapping out your study plan, actually say, okay, for this day, I'll be reading chapter 2, 3, and 5 for law. And Tuesday, I'll be reading, this chapter and so on. Now, before I go any further, there's something that I need to highlight. There's different types of learners. I'm not quite 100% with the theories and around this, but there's different types of learners, the right and the left. So these learners learn differently. There's learners that learn best when they have daily schedules, so an hourly. So from 9 to 8, this is what I have to do. From 8 to 7, from 7 to 8, this is what I have to do. From 11 to 12, this is what I have to do. So they need clear schedule of every hour, every day of the week. They need to separate and really map out what they will do. Now, the other learners get stressed, get worried if it is mapped out that way. They feel like they're being choked, like something is not right, and they cannot work like that. Such learners prefer bigger schedules. So they have weekly targets or daily targets. So instead of saying from 8 to 9, I'll be doing this, from 9 to 10, I'll be doing this, what such learners do, or such personality is, they will say, okay, on Monday, I have to do A, B, and C. Now, when I do it and how I do it, it will depend on how I wake up that day. Or they have weekly targets to say at the end of the week, I have to have read 5 chapters in English 101. I need to have read 10 chapters in law, 15 chapters in economics, for example. Now, the day you do it, the time you do it, that will depend on other things, how you feel, your mood, and you're just a free learner. You want to be free the way you learn, right? So the first thing as students is for you to determine which kind of learner you are. Are you the one that prefers, please thumbs up if you are the learner that prefers daily schedules, hourly schedules. If that works for you, thumbs up for me, please. Okay, Refili Way. Who else? Okay, Naledi, Maggie. Okay. Now, if you are the learner that prefers weekly, all right, Grace as well, and Nancy, okay, all right. Now, if you are the learner and Innocent as well, if you are the type of learner that prefers bigger schedules, weekly schedules, monthly schedules, thumbs up. Now, this is very important. So knowing the kind of learner that you are, that is how you start creating your schedule. And that is why in your academic journey as students, you want to really avoid, just going with the flow. what everybody does, then I do it, right? You need to know what works for you, your personality type, your study type, how you study best. Are you someone who studies best in quiet areas, with your peers? How do you prefer to learn? How long can you take to learn? All of this is really important when you create your study plan. Okay, it's really important, otherwise it will not work. So knowing now that, okay, this cannot work for me. So a plan like what your senior may not work with, every hour having what you will do, that will stress you out, right? So you will have, your plan will now be based on the week. This is what I have to do for this week. And then when you wake up that on a specific day, you decide, okay, I have this much to do. Today I'm going to do 2. I think I'll feel in a better mood tomorrow to do 3, and so on. But at the end, you have to achieve the target that you set for yourself. Okay, and again, always remember, whatever Queen says is suggestions, strategies that you could use. It's not a prescription. If whatever you have going on is working for you, please do that. If you can take 1 or 2 strategies to ameliorate it, please do that. If you need to change everything, do that. Okay, so what we do is provide you with a spectrum of suggestions, and you will choose what works for you. So if you have kept up with your coursework, so studying will mostly involve revision when you create that study plan. But if you have not been reading and you're revising for exams, then, or studying for exams, then your schedule will be scheduled between studying and reviewing. Okay, so if there's not enough time to go through everything, then you have to decide what material is more important for the exams. I mean, we always say that studying is not just about exams. It's for you to gain knowledge and skills that will be helpful in your life, in your work. But you have to pass that exam, because at the end of the day, you you paid your fees, you're doing the module, you need to be able to produce a degree at the end of the year. And if you fail, you won't achieve that goal. So you still need to think about the importance of that exam. So what you want to do is to decide then, okay, if I don't have enough time to read everything, try to see if there's a scope from the lecturer, from your tutor, if they have given you some kind of guidance as to what you need to read for that specific exam, then you want to focus on that if you don't have enough time. And then you need to budget your time realistically. And by realistically, is truly what works for you. Now, we have those that can study 2 hours straight. We have others that can only study for 1 hour. We have those that can study for up to 6 hours, right? When I sit to write chapters, when I sit to work, I prefer to have, if I know that I'm going to sit and study and write, I really cannot do that if I don't have at least 3 hours. For me, it's 3 to 6 hours with breaks in between, right? Small walks in between, coffee breaks, water breaks, rest. But I prefer to study longer hours. Right? Shorter hours, I just feel like I'm just getting started. I rather study 6 hours today and skip tomorrow, or 8 hours today and skip tomorrow to rest, and then study the next day. So you know what works for you. Do you prefer small or shorter spaces every day, or do you prefer longer hours and skip? Whatever works for you, but budget your time according to what works for you. Being realistic of other priorities and responsibilities that you have in your life, right? Allocate the study time into several manageable sessions. So if you're going to study for 6 hours, you could have maybe 2 hours and a 30-minute rest, and continue and have another, rest. So try to have rest in between your study time. That will really help your brain. As we spoke yesterday, we saw that the brain is really important. Divide your course material into small sections. Also, that will help. Set clear and specific goals for each session. Remember, as I said, getting started in a study session can take a lot of time if you don't know what you're doing for that specific session. Prioritize to ensure material is weighted more, that will come towards the exam, takes most of the time. Now, this means it's important to try to find out what will be covered in the exams. Don't make your study sessions too long without breaks. Study sessions should have variety in terms of topics, activities to prevent boredom and loss of effectiveness. Now, this is, please put a star on this, right? Put a note on this. This point is extremely important because even if you can go long hours, like me, as I've said, I can study long hours, but if I don't do this, it won't work. I'll start thinking about the beach. I truly love being at the beach. And sometimes if I don't have money to get there, at least I can go there in my mind, isn't it? I can just close my eyes and be at that beach and float, and let the water carry me. So for me to avoid to do that, I need to really have variety of topics. I need to have different things that I'm doing. Now, let me explain. Usually what I do is I'll have maybe an hour of research where I go online on different databases. What I do during that time is I'm only researching. I'm not reading. I look for material. I save under my general folders for the different things that I need to do, different topics, chapters. And then the next hour now, I do my skimming. That's where the reading comes in, to put them in different folders. Then I go back to another chapter. I use the next 2 hours to do some maybe note taking, and the last 2 hours I use to write. Now I need to write, even if it's not the same chapters, but what I do is I try to do different activities in the study session. Now, if you were to only read for 6 hours, the possibility is you will not get much from that reading. You will forget, your brain will not recall a lot of information. It will be as if you're reading a novel and it will get in and out, get in and out. But if you involve it in different activities or ways of studying in a session, then you're maximizing your retention capacity. So you want to ensure that when you read, you can read, take notes, and then have a small quiz to test what you have read, right? You could also read in different ways. You could listen to some YouTube videos about the topic you're reading. You could, if you recorded your lectures, maybe you could listen to that, or you could take down notes, highlight, and then always have some kind of activity at the end. That really is important. Also avoid cramming. It's really about understanding, right? And don't forget those breaks that we're talking about. So if you take all of this into consideration, then you will really be able to create a plan that will work for you, okay? So if you have started early, you've identified what you need to read, you've organized, you've created that study plan, taking into consideration all what we've spoken about. Now let's get into how to interpret your questions. So how do you go about interpreting your questions? So we started highlighting this yesterday. We're just going to go into more detail today. So there's usually 3 steps in analyzing an assignment questions, right? Though it may involve more than that, it may be more than 3 things that you need to do. But what is important is for you to read through all the question, mark the questions that you think you understand or know how to answer. Start with the easy questions. Before you start a question, identify the tax word. So you will need to really identify these 3 things. Number 1, what is the tax word? Tax word, command words, they're all the same. So these are the words that ask you exactly what you need to do. So for example, compare, it always means you need to show the differences and similarities. Discuss usually means you need to take a stand. It's argumentative. Evaluate, again, you need to critique. Critique, you need to analyze, right? Analyze, you need to critique. You need to look at a point, argue it for or against, and back it up with evidence why you're doing so. So already, if I have a question that is saying discuss, that means I need an argument. And now if I start narrating, I'm probably not going to get the full marks because I have not understood the task that is required of me. The topic. This is generally the discussion area. What are you discussing? What are you analyzing? What are you comparing and contrasting? So this is the what. right, of the question. Then you want to know the limitation or focus. Now, this is how far you can go with a specific question. Now, let me give an example with the limitation. Discuss the causes of COVID in education. All right. So you start by maybe saying the first consequence of COVID is business is closing down. Now, you're not discussing the limits, you're discussing the consequences within education specifically. Now, when you start talking about businesses closing down, you are off topic because you have not respected the focus or the limitation. You were limited to specific consequences within education, right? So you will talk about things like loss of reduction in contact time, technological issues or connectivity issues, so you will talk about all the consequences that COVID had within education, how it affected students, how it affected teachers, and the entire institution. So if, for example, you were asked to discuss the causes of poverty in Africa, like the one we addressed on Monday, if you were asked to do that, then you start giving examples of, in Europe or Asia. Now you're going out of scope. Or if you were asked to discuss something in South Africa, and now you're giving examples in Kenya and so on, then you are going out of scope. Sometimes the lecturer will say, focus on the examples provided in class, or focus on the readings provided in class. Now you are looking for maybe readings online and so on, or you're giving examples online or in other articles, then you have gone out of scope. Although you could be right, or the information could be correct, let me put it that way, you are not respecting the instruction of the question, or you're not respecting the limitation of how far you should go with that specific question. So that is how important it is. All right, so this is an example. Okay. Explain the concepts of relationship marketing and the co-creation value. How are these two concepts related? Illustrate your answer using co-creation continuum, discuss in class, and appropriate examples. Now, I want you to identify what are the tax words in this question. Now, this is a complex question. Questions that usually require you to do more than one thing. And we're going to look at that, right? But what I need you to do now is to unpack this question for me. So in the chat, what do you think are the tax words or the command words?
Okay, the command words are explain, how, and illustrate.
Excellent to you, Maggie and Refiliwe. That also shared the same in the chat. And Nancy, you are extremely correct. Those are the tax words. So you will be required in this question to show the how, to illustrate, to explain. Now, what does this mean? You need to know when I say explain, what does it mean, right? Let's check the next slide. We'll come back to the topic words. So when we say explain, these are our tax words. Now let's glance through them. Let's look for explain, explain. Now here we have. Now the second bullet on the right, explain. Explain means to offer a detailed and exact rationale behind an idea or principle or set of reasons for a situation or attitude. The explanation should increase the reader's understanding of a topic or idea. So now this question is asking us to explain. So that is what we have to do in this question, isn't it? We need to offer a detailed and exact rationale, right? So you need to give details for us to understand the concepts of relationship marketing and co-creation. Now, the how. You need to know, what does how mean? What does illustrate mean? Let's look at illustrate. When we are asked to illustrate, what are we asking you to do? Illustrate, illustrate. Let's see if we have it. There we go. The first on the left, to illustrate/demonstrate. This requires an answer that consists of mainly examples to demonstrate or prove the subject of the question. It is often accompanied with further instructions, interpret, very similar to explain. So you see the illustrate goes with the explanation. Already when you know this, you know most often when you have to explain, illustrate will go. And when you are familiar with these tax words, you see that it becomes even easier for you to interpret questions and understand questions. All right. Now look at this slide again. What is the topic? What are we explaining? What are we illustrating? What is the topic, the main focus of this question? What is the what in this question? What is the main focus? So the topic, the what are we explaining? Yes, Maggie?
Okay, we are explaining about the relationship marketing and co-creation of value. Those are our main topics.
Excellent. Maggie, don't switch off your mic yet. Excellent. And what would be the limitation?
I don't understand that question.
What would be the limit, right? So how far should you go? So number 3 here, the focus. What is the specific area? So how far should you go? The question is limiting you to what?
Compare the two.
Excellent. So it's just the two. So if maybe in class there were different concepts, you're not going to discuss 4 concepts. It's these 2 that you'll be showing the how. And if you go down the illustrate, what is very limiting here is your answer. Illustrate your answer using the co-creation continuum discussed in class. Now, if you were not in class, you are in deep problems, right? You may not answer this question because the lecturer only wants the ones that were discussed in class. So there could be plenty, but your answer has been limited to the appropriate examples discussed in class. So that means even if you give examples in the textbooks, if they were not discussed in class, you will fail. And lecturers can do this, again, to give advantage to students that come to class and take notes, because then they can go to their books and look at those that were discussed in class, or they can remember what they took in their notes and those that were discussed in class from those that maybe they read in textbooks, right? Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Liwato. Okay, so that is how you look at your tax words, topic words, as well as limit or the focus. So how far you should go with a specific question. So you will see here, if you get the slides, you can go through your tax words, read them, try to understand them, so that if you're in an exam, the exam says comment, you know what to do. Argue, you know what to do. Explain, you know what to do. Critique, you know what to do. So if you go online and you just Google tax words, the list can also come up. You can save that and just learn them, right? So you see on the slide, I have a couple of them, but I'm not going to go through them because you can't do that at your own time, okay? Now, let's look at another example, or how to unpack, the meaning in a question. So when you take the question, so checking the meaning of any words that you don't understand. So once you have really looked at the tax words, the topic words, as well as the limit words, the next thing you want to do is to check the meaning of any difficult words that you do not know. Now, there's some words that really, you know that they're not important, or you could still understand the question without the word, but mostly for questions, when you read textbooks, you don't have to really understand every word. Imagine if you were to go to the dictionary for every difficult word that you encounter when reading articles or textbooks. You will never finish a textbook. It will be very difficult for you to finish a textbook or an article. And I'm talking even for myself, right? Because there's so many words in English, and knowing all of them is really difficult. When you read for understanding. What does this mean? If you read a sentence and you understand it, you do not need to check for all the difficult words. Now, you only check for a difficult word if it impedes understanding. So once it impedes understanding, then you can check for the meaning. But when it comes to questions, please check all difficult words, because if you don't understand a word, it may hinder your understanding of that question, and you may answer incorrectly, you may go off topic, or you may not answer the question fully. So if it's possible, maybe there's, your lecturer, maybe you can ask if they can explain a word that you don't understand. Usually they will do. They're not interpreting the question for you. They're not telling you the answer, but, maybe they could help to explain a word that you've never seen before. I mean, English is not most of us our first language. So, mostly lecturers understand, especially if it's not English, right? Or let me say an English module where it's all about the language itself. So you want to check for any difficult questions. If it's an assignment, look it up, check what it means, look at your study guide, look at your textbook, check your dictionary to try to understand that word. If it's a quote, when a question is given based on a quote, maybe a quote is provided and you're asked to interpret that specific quote. Now, what you want to do is to try to understand the broader context of that quote. If it was taken maybe from a novel, you want to really read around, locate that source and read around that specific quote, so that it will really help you to understand what led to that specific statement, and this can really help you also to understand the author's position and how to really structure your own individualized argument. Okay. Now, how do you unpack complex questions? Now, some questions like the one we unpack now, that is a complex question. The co-creation value. This is not a one question. Okay, if I were to say explain the concept co-creation and relationship marketing, and I end there, that is a simple question you're explaining. But now this is one question, but with three different things that you need to do, right? That is a complex question. So you always need to ask yourself, have I gotten the full scope of what needs to be done? Now that one is even easier because it's really you can see the different, it's three different things with full stops in between them. Now look at this specific question, right? Define Maslow's hierarchy of need. Define Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Okay, that is one question. Describe how they apply to an online marketing environment. That's two questions. When I look at this at face value, there's two things I need to do. I need to define the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I need to describe how they apply to the online marketing environment, right? Let's unpack this question. The first thing you need to do here is to define Maslow's hierarchy of need. The second thing you need to do is to describe online marketing. But if you look at our question, it says describe how they apply to an online marketing. It's not saying describe online marketing. So why do we need to describe online marketing? Because if we don't know what online marketing is, we are not going to be able to show the relationship. You cannot show the relation. When we look at the types of essays, looking at the comparative essay, we saw that before you start your comparison in the introduction, you need to contextualize both terms. You need to define both terms, and you need to then show the differences and similarities. So each time you're showing the relationship between two things, we need to know what these two things are. So if you're going to show how something applies to something else, we need to know what these two things are. But you see, it is implicit, it's implied. It's not clearly stated that you should describe online marketing first before showing the relationship, how Maslow applies to the online marketing environment, right? So you will see here, the question then has three different chunks. And if you were to leave out one chunk, perhaps you will not perhaps, you will not get all the marks. So if you could have maybe 8 on 10 or 7 on 10, depending on how the lecturer assigned the marks, but you will lose some marks, right? So the first thing in this question is you have to understand what Maslow's hierarchy is, and then you have to explain it, and then you have to define what online marketing is, what an online marketing environment is. Then you will now show how you can use Maslow, or the relationship between Maslow and the online marketing environment. Okay, so that is the complexity of questions that have many things that you need to do. So each time you have a question, it's important for you to really think and really unpack, look at that question again and again, and ensure that you're answering the question fully. Okay, so once you've identified the command words, interpreted the question, and check any difficult meaning that you need, maybe anything that you did not understand, you need to plan how you will structure your assignment. This is best done, this will help you save time, especially even when you're researching the topic. It will really help you, to see if you organize how you want to go about doing this assignment. It will help you. So this is an example, a question that says, discuss the social effects surrounding the Act of Parliament. Now, imagine you have chosen your Act of Parliament and you've identified 2 main effects, with each effect incorporating several other sub-effects. So the paragraphs can be structured in this way, right? So you could have your introduction, you could introduce effect A and B, and then you could start with effect A and look at sub-effect A, sub-effect B, and so on. Then sub-effect A, number 1, number 2, number 3. Then you can go to B, look at 1, 2, 3. Then you have your conclusion and so on. So you see, this is a possible structure. So this is what you need to do. Once you have a question, you think about how you want to go about structuring that specific question. This is an example of compare and contrast Smith and Brown's theories about human development. So this question is basically asking you to write about the similarities and differences between the two. So imagine you've read up on both theories, but found that there are more differences than similarities. Further, with the similarities, there are 2 main features, and within the differences, there are 3 main features. So if that is the case, then you will want to structure your work in this manner. You have your introduction where you provide the context, right? Then you will start with the similarities. With the similarities, you do feature A, where you explain Smith and Brown's theory, right? Here we can see this is the zigzag method. For those who attended the types of essay, you can see that this is the zigzag method. For those who have not attended yet, I think we still have a session of type of essays this month, so you can look forward to that. So then you can go to B, and then look at examples from Brown's theory and Smith theory. Then, so remember, the feature A, feature B are our units of comparison, right? Because when we look at the type of essays, we saw that when we are comparing and contrasting and using the alternating or zigzag method, generally we need a unit of comparison, right? So feature A will be your unit of comparison. For example, if you're comparing 2 theories, maybe feature A could be the personalities within the theory. Maybe feature B could be the process within the theories, right? So those would be the units that you'll be comparing. If you're comparing 2 houses, for example, the structure of the house could be the first unit of comparison. The quality of work in the house could be another, in both houses could be another unit of comparison. So in terms of quality, you say house A, the quality is low because of this. House B, the quality is high because of this. Then in terms of, design, maybe you compare the design. So those are the units of comparison between the 2 things. Then after you're done with the similarities, now you come and discuss the differences. Within the differences, you have feature A, B, C, and D, and so on. Then you will have your conclusion. Then with a question like this, discuss cross-cultural communication issues in business organization. Now, imagine you have identified 4 main issues, the associated causes, and possible potential solutions. So what we want to do is to introduce cross-cultural communication, its influence on both business environments, then briefly introduce the 4 main issues surrounding cross-cultural communication. Then you will discuss issue A, B, C, D in separate paragraphs. So for issue A or 1, you will identify and explain the nature of the problem. You outline the causal factors, right? The causes. Then you will describe 2 possible solutions. And you will do this for each issue. And again, that will provide that cohesion that we spoke about on Monday, right? That cohesion that you want to achieve in your essay by having paragraphs of similar length. Once you know that in this paragraph, I need to identify, outline, and describe for each paragraph, already that is cohesion. Because when I go to the first paragraph, the problem is introduced, then the causes, then the solution, and I move to the next. Same pattern, identify, outline, possible solution. Already you're getting marks because the cohesion is clear. Every paragraph has the same structure, right? So in unpacking your question, it will not be possible to unpack well if you do not consider the structure that your question will take, okay? So in summary, when unpacking your questions, it's important that you underline the keywords. Does the question require you to discuss, explain? What is the main concept? Look at the mark allocation to help you know how much you need to write. Brainstorm, plan, and draw a mind map of how you want to answer. Remember to construct full sentences. Even with those answers that say, let's say name the 3 reasons for technology, or what can I think about? Okay, let's go with something very basic, right? Everything just went off my mind. Okay, name 3 consequences of COVID, right? Let's go with that since COVID is in my mind. Name 3 consequences of COVID. So what we want to do is not just say death, loss of life, and loss of family or contact time, or depression. So what you want to do is construct a full sentence to say the main reasons for, or the main consequences of COVID are 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you want to construct that full sentence. You want to rephrase it and answer it and not just dive straight in. Because why did this happen? Because no, you want to say this happened because. So you want to always construct those full sentences. Remember to start with the easy questions with more marks, right? Always give yourself some time and proofread your question before submitting. Okay, so any questions on how to go about unpacking your questions? So we're going to look at study tips, right? And then we're going to look at how to recall, how to maximize your memory retention. That is really important. Then we're going to look at how to understand your assignment instructions and so on. So there's a lot more different types of assignments, how to maximize or make the most of your feedback. And then we're going to end off the session by looking at how to understand your assignment rubrics, right? Which is really important because most students don't use that. And we saw yesterday that it is important to be able to really utilize your marking rubric. All right, let's continue. Where are we? Study tips. Now, some of these we discussed some of these yesterday, so I'm not going to waste too much time talking about study tips. I'm just going to talk briefly about this. Then we're going to have our 10-minute break and we're going to resume with the next topics. All right. So complete all necessary reading, right? When studying, review past assignments, test topic, question types, reread the course syllabus, focus on the description, set a realistic goal, and determine a daily amount of time or weekly amount of time for your studies. Determine how to balance study, regular course, and other important work. Now, this is very important for your time management. If you struggle with time management, we will discuss more about it when we do the critical thinking, time management, and group work workshop. Read your notes or your summary. Locate as many study aids as possible. What can help you? Libraries, online databases, study guides, past questions, screen, study groups, peers that can help you, lecturers, tutors, whoever or whatever can help you locate that. Know that, all your support structure, the support structure available to you. Ensure that you know what is really available to you. Read your notes. Be mindful of interruptions. Now, you know what is distraction to you. I always say that. So you need to be able to know that, okay, this is the main distraction. And if I'm studying, I need to stay away from my phone because my phone will distract me. I need to stay away from maybe exercising because, I'm an exercise I love exercising too much. So if I go to the gym, I know I will only come back after 6 hours and I don't have that much time. So you need to know what is distraction to you. Is it reading novels? Take those out. Remember to take care of yourself, exercise, drink enough water, have enough rest, and manage your time effectively. Okay, so this is a summary of some of the things we discussed yesterday when we were looking at, preparation for exams and tests. That is why I'm not going into detail about this. But if you did not attend yesterday's workshop and you need more of these, remember you can book for a one-on-one session with me to discuss more studying strategies. But these are strategies that I mentioned in most workshops, so you will catch up. But if you need more help, as I said, please book a session with me. Now, mind maps. Mind maps are also a good way to study. So when you're studying, you can make good use of your mind maps. So remember yesterday we spoke about note taking. Taking notes through flashcards, taking notes through your notebook, but mind maps are also a good way to take notes in preparation as you study. And there are different ways in which you can structure your mind map. So you can use this way, you can see here, the main topic is there and the green, it's one aspect of the topic. The pink, yellow, and so on. So you can use these steps to really go about structuring your mind map. And I'm not going to really go into detail. When you get the presentation, you can actually just check how do you structure your mind map. We see here, the explanation is simply telling you how to go about this, putting this in the center and the main topics like this and the subtopics like that. So this is what this slide is really about, right? So the same way you see purple is the main topic, then the subtopic. So if we're discussing the causes of poverty in Africa, the blue could be the socioeconomic causes, the pink could be the political causes, the yellow could be the health causes, and so on, and the last could be the maybe religious causes. So you could separate that, and then within the socioeconomic causes, maybe you have low infrastructure, lack of education, and then under the health, maybe you have corruption within the health, or poor infrastructures in hospitals, and so on. So then you have subtopics under each, again, depending on how long the question is and how much you need to write. So that is how you go about having your mind map. Okay, now in preparation or as you study, another important thing when you study is your time management. You need to be able to manage your time. If you cannot manage your time, then studying becomes difficult. And we'll go into more details in the time management workshop. But what is important is everyone has the same amount of time available to them. You cannot control time, but we can learn to use it more efficiently and effectively by planning carefully. So you need to always consider how much time should be allocated to your study. Then you need to consider how much time you have for your other priorities. You need to make the best of the time. You need to establish a routine that works for you. Okay? You need to have, for those who prefer to have your semester or your daily plans, then something like this will work. You will see here, this is lectures on Monday, 8 o'clock, and so on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, voila. But you could also have semester plans, monthly plans, weekly plans, daily plans, not hourly plans, because these are hourly plans, what to do for every hour. But you could also have your daily plans, weekly plans, monthly plans, semester plans, right? But what is important, very important as a study strategy, is to have a to-do list and things to avoid, not to-do list. Now, every student should have this, at the head of their bed, on the fridge, somewhere that you will constantly see, or on your notepad or your diary, somewhere that when you open, every day it reminds you of what you need to do, things that you need to do that are important for the week or for the month, and things that you should stay away from for that week, for the month, or for the day, right? So that you constantly remind yourself, stay away from Instagram, Queen, stay away from Instagram. Then you need to remember to, study. You need to remember to study, or you need to read this chapter, submission date is due, and so on. So you need to have a to-do list and a not to-do list. This really, truly helps for time management. All right? Okay. So we're going to have a 10-minute break, and then we're going to look at memory. Now, this is extremely important for studying. We cannot talk about studying without memory. Now, yesterday I spoke a lot about memory retention, memory retention. Now, today we're going to look at principles of good memory. So what are the strategies? What do you need to do to have good memory? So when we resume after our 10 minutes break, we're going to look at memory and understanding your assignment rubrics and making the most of the feedback from your lecturers. Okay, so it's 4 o'clock. So we're going to resume at 10 past 4. I know I'm going to have a cup of coffee. You can have one, you can have some water, or just a stroll for some breeze. Okay, so I'll see you back at 16:12. Let's give exactly 10 minutes. Let's continue. Sorry, as you can see, I had to create a slide. I'm unable to access the chat today. So anything I need to write, I'm just going to write it on a new slide. I just need to remember to delete this so that, yeah, all right. So we're going to look at the different strategies or techniques that you can use to recall information easier and faster. So what we'll be doing is we'll be discussing the principles of good memory. Now, the one skill that students regularly suggest they could improve on is their memory skills. Now, no pills, potions, or poultices will ever help you learn material in some magic way other than doing the work. In addition, there's no substitute for practice, 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 or more appropriately, revision, revision, revision. Now, one principle that you need to remember is that there's no single method that suits all situations. So you need to know the way you remember. For example, a shopping list might be different from remembering a theory. Therefore, you need to utilize different memory techniques for different tasks. So now we will look at some quick methods of organizing, yourself, your environment, your material to study to optimize, your studies time. To maximize your memory retention. So what I chose to share with you today is these 5 different strategies or principles that will help you to increase your memory retention skills. So the first one is your context and environment. So where you learn matters. The second is your state and mood. And I highlighted this yesterday. The third is regular breaks and small chunks. Number 4 is understanding. It's not cramming, but understanding. Number 5 is active learning. Now let's look at each of these. So when we talk about the environment in which you learn, your memory is dependent on the environment, which basically refers to the place where you learn. For example, studying in a similar environment to the one which will be tested has been proven to increase your memory skills. But if you're unable to do that, then you need to find a space that is free from too many distractions. So remember, what is distraction to refill way may not be distraction to Moni or to Grace or to Nancy or to Plum, right? So distraction to me may not be distraction to someone else. I know some people really, they can control social media, and if they're on Instagram, they can stop at any time. I know I could go for 3 hours without being able to stop. Like literally, I cannot stop. So that is distraction to me. Just being close to my phone is distraction. But to some people, they're very disciplined. And, just even if the phone is there, there's TV with their favorite movie. If it's study time, it's study time, right? Some people, distraction is noise, any form of noise. They need to be in a quiet environment. I know some friends that study only in the library because the library is truly the most quiet, or hopefully supposed to be a quiet environment, right? It's the study space. So you need to know what is distraction to you and your environment. If you want to maximize your retention, your environment needs to be free from too many distractions. Now, this is not light, and something I'm sure we don't take into consideration, the temperature. You need to have suitable temperature with adequate ventilation. Now, I spoke about the brain yesterday, the work of the brain. Now, the brain has soldiers. Let's take it this way. I have 5, let's say I have 10 soldiers, right? Those are the neurons. Remember, the brain is what makes your entire body to function, right? So this means that if you have 10 soldiers, so the neurons, the brain then sends one soldier to target hunger. The other will send one soldier to target your body temperature, and so on. So if you are in a suitable environment, the light is it's appropriate, the temperature is appropriate, you're not hungry, the furniture is making you comfortable, you're seated comfortably, then what happens is all your 10 soldiers are focusing on one thing, which is the material that we are reading. So that means the information, when you read, they take that information and store it. You read, they take it and store it. But if when you read, someone is passing by, your phone is ringing, there is noise. Now, what is happening is your brain keeps sending soldiers to say, okay, we're trying to do this. Can you block out the noise? Can you handle this? Can you handle that? If you're hungry, send some soldiers to target the hunger, because remember, your brain is trying to do what is necessary for you to stay alive, to protect your body. So if you are in an environment with where the ventilation is not appropriate, your brain needs to send soldiers to really, when you kind of shake, just so that, okay, now I'm not a doctor, you can see that clearly from my explanations, but just so that you don't freeze, your brain needs to send soldiers to prevent you from freezing, right? Or if it's too hot, it needs to send soldiers for the heat so that you can sweat it out, and then the focus is not, you're not at your 100%. It's scientific. So try to make sure your environment is as comfortable as possible, including the furniture you use. So you should ensure that there's no hunger pains, there's no thirst. So have your water. I have a bottle of water here. I have my coffee, whatever keeps you, well focused, so that you can retain information as much as possible. So in conclusion, your environment needs to be conducive for learning. Then you need to think about your mood. Mood impacts your ability to recall information you have studied. When studying, a little anxiety is quite normal and can enhance your focus. So when you know an exam is coming, you're a bit anxious. That is okay, because that anxiety is what will push you to study for 2 hours when you want to give up. You'll be like, no, that small adrenaline will push you to keep going. However, being too anxious, may then slow down your ability. As we spoke yesterday also, you being angry or you being sad, again, can prevent your brain from retaining information. So what you want to do is to make sure that you are happy, you're surrounded by positivity, keep encouraging yourself, boost your mood, stay positive. Positivity. It's extremely important. Now, when we look at the critical thinking workshop, we're going to look at the mindset in more detail, and the mindset is extremely important when we look at mood, right? The mindset you have towards your study is important, towards yourself is important. So stay positive, stay confident, stay in a good mood, because you may not know it, but being in a good mood will improve your retention capacity. Regular breaks. Even if you don't like it, this is not about what you like or, what you don't like. Scientifically, you're giving your brain rest. The more your brain can rest in between, the more it will remember information. That is why I don't know if growing up, or up to this point in your study journey, you experience those students that you're like, but this person is always in the library 24 hours. They always studying. How come they're failing? And you're asking yourself, what's happening? Studying for 24 hours will not determine success, because you can read for 24 hours, but then the brain could only retain maybe an hour an hour worth of information, and the rest of the time that information is getting into one side, going out on the other side, because the brain is tired, it's blocked out. You are reading, but you are not retaining the information. So it's important that you have regular breaks to give your brain time to rest, so that when you read, that brain can now retain that information. So regular breaks and small chunks, those different activities that we spoke about. We'll talk more about that with active learning, okay? But regular breaks and small chunks, breaking your material into small chunks, manageable portions. So instead of reading 15 chapters at once, maybe read 2 chapters, answer the questions, and then do an activity, and then continue, right? That is important. You will retain more information. Sorry, went back to the previous slide. Understanding. If you don't understand, you won't remember it. Now, some people have photogenic memories and they're really good with cramming. Others can cram and, they can read something and produce it back exactly. If you have that kind of memory, it's a gift. Probably you still will maybe able to get the information in the test right. But the thing with cramming is that if you forget one thing, you may forget the rest of the thing. Your brain gets into panic mode and you forget everything else. It's just like blank, like, oh my God, what's going on, And you panic, you become anxious, and you may fail. So, but if you understand it, then your brain will not forget that information. So try to understand the basic principles, then work yourself up to more complex examples. Sometimes introductory books may allow you to understand concepts that underline a more complex idea. So if the concept is difficult, instead to cram it, try to look for introductory books. Now, and most lecturers don't really like it when students use Wikipedia, because it's just that place where everybody can post. So it's not really an academic source, but it is a really good place to start, because it's not highly academic. The language is mostly simple. Even I, usually read from Wikipedia just to get an understanding of a difficult concept, because sometimes the way they explain it there, they explain it simple, because even high school students, primary, secondary school students sometimes use that material. So and it's posted by teachers, by lecturers, by bloggers, by students themselves. So some material is really easier to understand. So Wikipedia is a good place to start. YouTube, you can go on YouTube just to get some, to see if you can get some videos, some easy material to understand the concept. Then you go back to your textbook, which uses a more complex language, academic language. Now, once you have gotten an understanding of a concept from an easier source, you can now come back to the required or academic sources. With that understanding, when you start reading, trust me, it's easier. You're like, oh, yes. So this is what they meant. Oh, I see now, I get it, right? And if you can think back, there's situations where the lecturer explains something and you don't understand it, but when your peer or your friend or someone else or your tutor explains it, you understand it, and vice versa. Sometimes a friend might tell you something, you don't understand it, but you understand it from the lecturer or from the tutor, right? So that is what I'm saying. If you don't understand it or you don't get it, instead of using the shortcut to cram, it's rather you find an easier source. Find those other support structures. Maybe someone else could explain it in a different way instead of just, pushing that information aside or just cramming it. So read for understanding. And if you understand, you will remember it. The last thing in our, principles of good memory is active learning. Now, don't just read over the material and assume that you've absorbed that information like a sponge, right? That approach is too passive. Do something with what you are trying to remember and engage with the material. So ask yourself questions when you're reading. Think about the topic in relation to your own experience. How does this relate to me? Or my environment, or my context. These questions, once you can relate the information to you, once it's relevant to you, you are unlikely to forget. So when it's almost like if I remember some students asking me, but why do I have to read about Shakespeare? This is an old English writer in the 16th century. How is that important? And then I said it's about the themes that are applicable to today. He speaks about love. Do you feel love in your life? She's like, yes. Your love from your parents, love from your partner, and so on. Crime. Is there crime in our society? Yes. You get to learn about different characters. In your life, you have different types of personalities and characters. So this is how you apply the information. It's not about, the Englishman, but it's about the themes. It's about the theme of love, crime, deceit, and so on. It's about characterization, understanding different personalities. So these are skills that are transferable into your own context. That is how you learn. Now, if you want to be an engineer and you're learning about maybe the theory of, oh my gosh, do I know any theory in engineering? Okay, probably not. Let me look for another example. Let's say you're learning about physics and, they're talking about electromagnetic and how electricity works and so on. Then you think about, how does this help me or help with the phone? How does this help with the microwave? These are things that are applicable. How can I apply this theory into the practice of these, things that you use at your house? And the reason I'm using this example is because I attended a workshop where a physics student was sharing or explaining, and I can't remember because it was too complex, but was explaining how the microwave works, how it uses the water. So each thing you put in the microwave, when you warm food, it kind of sparks that water out of that food, and it's the energy from that water that helps the food to get warm. I was amazed. I was like, wow, and that made me want to learn physics. I know it's too late for me because I'm too lazy to start learning physics, but it sparked some interest in me because a microwave is something that I use all the time, right? So knowing how it works was really exciting. So that is what you want to do. You want to be able to really contextualize your studies. How is this applicable to me? How is this applicable to my own experience? Put those theories in your own words. Don't just cram what the author is saying. Explain it in your own words. Write it down in your own words. Discuss those theories with your peers. Remember the strategies we spoke about yesterday, the reading strategies. You need to speak it out loud, right? So discuss it with your classmates. Put a question into a discussion forum, be it a WhatsApp group in class, a community group that, you study together or so on. Discuss issues, put a question, critique, argue, walk through some examples when you study. Write a summary, a list, a chart, some flashcards, a mind map. So don't try to memorize. Do something about what you're reading. This is what we call active learning, and it is the strongest strategy for memory retention, right? When you learn actively, you will remember majority of the information, of course, together with understanding, small chunks, regular breaks, your mood, and the environment with which you learn. If you can do this, then you will really truly increase your memory capacity. Okay. So these are some other strategies that you can use that will improve your memory. So always make use of diagrams. They really help, especially for the visual learners, right? And then you can also use charts and tables. And then you can use mind maps. You can use imagery. These will help. So some pictures can help you, to really remember the information, and so on. So these strategies will help you further remember that information. Another thing that really helps students is the Roman room. So basically, this strategy is when you read and you attach meaning to the things that surround you. And remember, when earlier on I said learning in the environment in which you study. So your learning environment, right? Let's go a little bit up. So this, right? That learning in the environment in which you will be tested increases your ability to recall information. But what that can also do is to help with the Roman room. Because then in that space, you can attach meaning to the things in that room. But if it's not even in that same room, no problem. If it's in your bedroom, you have a TV, for example, you have your study decks, your window. So what you do is, let's say you're reading concepts, you're reading about communism, Marxism, you're reading about maybe the brain theory, Socrates. So the chair becomes Socrates, the door becomes communism, the window becomes Marxism, and so on. So you attach meaning to the different things in your room. Now, what that will do is when you are in a situation where you need to remember something, you'll be like, oh, the window. This is the window, and the window is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the Roman room is another thing you could use. Acronyms also works. You can use your acronyms to remember information. For example, bed maths, the common ones that we know: brackets, exponential, division, multiplication, addition, and subtractions, right? Especially this will really be good when you remember ideas that you need to remember in the correct manner or process. If you need to do A before doing B, and so on. You will see there's track there for time, relevant, accuracy, concise, clear, steps, right? Rub, beef, red, orange, yellow, green, and so on. So acronyms can help you remember information. Self-talk or talk aloud. Again, just as we saw yesterday, this strategy will help you and help your brain to remember. It should be used after you've reviewed a topic once or twice. It's a good self-test and will allow you to know a topic better. Self-talk is often combined with other methods, but it's really a good strategy that you can use together with the Roman room. Just look at your room and talk. Look at the window. Marxism. Marxism is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Door. Communism is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you're using your Roman room to self-talk and to talk aloud. Those strategies combined can really help you. So this is a way in which you can practice self-talk. So you can read over your notes about a particular topic, check that you've understood it. Use the storage rehearsal method, so reciting definition, making short notes, writing these, labeling diagrams, take a break. After the break, go back to the first topic and test your recall by giving yourself a lecture on the topic. Talk out loud about all that you can remember. Monitor yourself. How fluently can you speak? Did you give theory and examples? Did you give differences and similarities? And you can record yourself, listen to it, and ask yourself these questions, right? If there are parts where you could not recall, look up the notes, reread these parts, and mark them in some way, right? With a highlighter or a note, so that you can redo them when you start talking again and give it extra attention. Another talk aloud method is to turn your notes on a topic into a narrative, and remember to recite it as a story with a beginning, middle, and end, as well as who, when, where, what, and why. So these are just some ways in which you can self-talk, because it is a really good strategy to remember information. What you should also do that is important is do it now. Now, when you read today and you have to read the same thing maybe in a month, probability is you'll be reading from start. But if you have to do it now, which means more consistency in your reading, then the more you do it, remember, memory is about practice, 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 practice. So do it now, and avoiding procrastination, again, will help you remember more information. Rewards are also very important. Because you are now in charge of your own learning, you also have to reward yourself when you have done a good day's work or week's work. You can keep yourself working with the knowledge that when the reference list is finished, you will check your email, text a friend, go for a run, arrange a bigger reward for yourself when a major assignment is completed. So just knowing that you will reward yourself, again, can help you retain more information. Be persistent. You have to keep going, right? Don't give up. You often find out where and when you are losing or wasting time. So did you leave something out of your plan? Are you not allowing a realistic time? Do you need an additional motivator? If the plan does not work straight away, do not give up. Spend some time thinking about it. What has happened? It may be something unanticipated which you have no control, such as illness. However, if it is not the case, it can be very educational to keep a time diary for every 2 or 3 days and note down what you are doing for every 20 minutes throughout the day and how long you do the different activities. So what is this slide saying? This slide is saying that if you realize that, you know what, something is not working and you don't know what is not working, use this method. So what you do is you say, okay, I'm going to find out what's going on for the next 3 days. So for those 3 days, you get a diary. And for every hour or every 20 minutes, if you can't every 20 minutes, you can maybe say every hour, write down what you're doing throughout the entire day for maybe 3 days, right? 2 to 3 days. What that will help you, and when you're writing this is, to really be honest about what you do. And then you will be able to realize that I just realized I spend 3 hours a day on my phone or watching TV or exercising or just talking with my friends, or you get, so it helps you to monitor yourself and truly know, because sometimes it's difficult to self-evaluate yourself. So having an hourly or half an hour or 20 minutes diary will really help. And remember, you're not doing this forever. It's just for a few days to really understand how to really work out your time more effectively. Now we are done with memory, recording, study plan, study skills. Now we're looking at the different assigned assessment, and we're not going to go into details with this. This is just highlighting that at UNISA, we have essays, you have multiple choice, you have reports, you have literature reviews type of assignments, you have business reports, you have research proposals, you have lab reports, and I'm sure you also have, other kind of projects or proposal, end of year projects, and so on. So you need to know the type of assessment that you will be given when you look at those syllables. So it's important to map out the different types of assessments so you know how to go about studying for them. Now, to get an A grade within the range, you will need to do more than one thing in order to do that. So let's look at how to get an A grade. Now, if this is not your target, then it's okay. I always say go with your goal. If you want to get more marks, so your aim is not just to get an A grade, but to improve on your assignment. So this is about improving on the current mark. So if you want to improve on what you currently have, maybe in a module or whatever the case may be. Okay, so if you want to improve on your marks, you will need to do this. Always integrating additional references beyond those that were assigned. So these are included in your assignment to demonstrate new points or extend or reinforce other points. So generally, lecturers will give you prescribed textbooks, prescribed articles. So having an A grade is always going further, one step further. So adding additional references. This shows that you're able to research, you're able to analyze, critique, and you're a self-learner that can really take initiative. That makes a difference. Including critical reflection and evaluation. Now, when we did the essay, we said the paragraph, for example, consists of description, then analyzing. Right? So if you describe only, you probably not get the full marks. But if you can describe, support with examples. Now, let's say I have 5 marks assigned for a specific paragraph. And I have 1 mark for the topic sentence, another mark for supporting sentences, another mark for examples, another mark for referencing, another mark for a conclusive sentence. Now, let's assume that you did not provide the example. That is 1 mark that has dropped. If you did not provide a reference, 1 mark has dropped. So for that paragraph, you will get 3 marks. So what I'm saying is, if you are able to reflect, to critique, generally, that means you can provide references and then analyze those references, and always it always gets you more marks, including some original analysis, right, of the issue, integrating ideas in an original way. For example, adopting a broader framework in which to position your points. That can help. Again, just being able to analyze. Remember, you're at university, and university usually encourages, critique. Integrating many points relevant to the topic. Now, let's say you're writing an essay, and with each paragraph, some paragraphs you provide examples, others you don't. You may lose marks, but the more examples you provide, the more topics you provide, a better structure would improve your overall mark, right? Nevertheless, achieving an A grade achieving a grade close to an A demonstrates that you have done well to achieve a competent standard with potential and promise for even greater work in future. So, as I said, it's really not about the A grade, it's about improving on the current grade. So if you want to improve on your current grade, you need to do that. And things you need to avoid, I'm just going to make this slightly smaller, and I hope those who were struggling to see can still see. Or let me just leave this the way it was and just bring it down. Okay, so what you want to avoid in order to improve your marks, so the things you should not do, don't rely too much on quotations. So instead of using direct quotes, rather use more of paraphrasing, and remember to always include the student voice. Now, this takes away a lot of marks. When I have a student's work and it's one reference after the other, every sentence is referenced, every sentence is referenced, too many direct quotes, your work becomes a copy paste and you will lose a lot of marks. And it takes effort to be able to read all those articles and reference, and the student is trying to do their best. You see good initiative, but you would lower your marks. And where you have to provide support, evidence, you don't. Remember to synthesize them. You don't have to reference every sentence, but you can provide an explanation and synthesize at the end, merge all the sentences. So what am I saying? You have author A, B, C saying the same thing. Instead of having 3 different sentences of the author saying the same thing, say it in your own words and then reference at the end the 3 different authors. That shows that these 3 different authors are saying what I have just mentioned here. So synthesizing really helps to show that you're providing enough support for each point. So sometimes if you cover little points rather than the full scope, remember we saw complex questions, maybe you provide few points rather than the required points, including details about the topic which are too brief and which require more explanation. Maybe you were supposed to provide examples. Maybe the lecturer will say provide 2 to 3 examples and you provide 1 example or 2. Each time they say 2 to 3, always aim for the 3. If you can give 3, always go for the 3. That will get you the A mark, the A grade, right? Failing to follow accepted standards in acknowledging the work. So poor referencing. We went through the referencing workshop and we saw that referencing is extremely important, and plagiarism can be intentional and or unintentional, and it's really about referencing accurately. So what you want to do is make sure that you acknowledge and reference your work. You don't want to be caught of plagiarism, or you don't want to lose marks because you did not reference appropriately. So also always follow the guide, right? What is your tutorial letter saying? Is it the Chicago MLA, Harvard? What exactly are you supposed to use? Providing a structure to your assignment that is very difficult and uninteresting to follow. So your assignment is void of structure. When we were doing the workshop on Monday, we saw the 2 pictures, the one with the scattered skeleton and the one with the structured skeleton. You will see that the scattered skeleton is confusing. You don't know where what is what, and it can be frustrating to the marker when you have a poor structure. So having a good structure, regardless of your assignment, will always help improve your marks. Having too many presentation errors, it's the last but not the least. Now, you can spoil a beautiful work with too many grammatical problems. And for example, Word, when you write on Word in itself mostly highlights words that have, for example, spelling mistakes. It highlights or it takes out some of the grammatical, not all, like homonyms, because, or when you write, it is the right spelling but the wrong word choice. That it's something that a marker, could pass. But spelling is something that is difficult. Full stops. You have students writing beautiful work, but there's no full stop. Starting sentences with capital letters or with small letters, writing names with small letters, capitalizations, full stops. The obvious things are truly, truly distracting to the marker, and it shows that the student did not take time to proofread their work, to edit their work. It shows laziness and lack of dedication to that specific assignment, and that usually brings down your mark. It will be extremely difficult, no matter how beautiful the structure and the content, to get an A grade with a poorly presented paper, right? You have not followed the formatting instructions. There's missing full stops, the obvious things, spellings, and so on. With too many of those, it will be difficult to get a good grade. So you want to take time to unpack the question, structure it, but also take time, which is the editing part, but you need to take time for the proofreading part as well. And we're going to look at that. So tomorrow we're doing critical thinking, group work, and time management. I've been talking a lot about this, so we'll do that tomorrow. That means editing and proofreading is next week. Okay, that means we're doing that next week. So let's continue. Let's finish with today's presentation. So too many errors, we're going to look at how to avoid these errors when we do the editing and proofreading, right? Because you don't want to, at the end, not get your full marks because you did not take time to edit and proofread your work. So how do you get the most of the feedback? Now, feedback is something you get when you do your work. You get feedback from your lecturers. It could be oral, it could be written, right? So what you want to do is to engage with that specific feedback. Now, make assessment part of your learning, not just a test of what you have learned. The trick to improving your assignment grades is to take the comments and turn them into practical points for improvement. So this is what you do. When you get that feedback from your lecturers or tutors, you need to be active, right? So it's not just about listening. You need to get the general feedback, and then you need to make sure that you go through those comments, understand what the lecturers are saying. If you're not able to understand it, book for consultations with them, send them an email, try to understand it, because if you don't, you will not improve on that specific problem for the next assignment, and you will be doing the same mistake. So you need to be active, understand that specific feedback, right? Take feedback as a learning advice, not as a critique to say this person is just criticizing me, right? It's an advice telling you how you should improve. Lecturers can use their own feedback language, which isn't always clear. So use the office hours, tutorials, and academic support services. So you can book a consultation with me if you're not understanding. So feedback is a dialogue. So don't be passive. You know, you need to be able to understand it and engage with it, right? Link the feedback back to the assessment criteria. So how does this feedback link to your rubric? Then act on that feedback. Remember, feedback isn't feedback until it's acted on. What specific improvement can I make? Is this improvement based on the structure? Is this based on the language? Is it based on research? You need to seek what kind of improvement is this am I focusing on? Do I need to focus on the content more? Do I mostly have problems with my language? So try to understand the gaps in your own learning, where you need to focus more in your own learning. Then, of course, there's the academic skills. You know, Queen is there to help you further with any of your academic challenges. Now, let's look at your rubric. Many university assessment will give you an assessment rubric with the assessment instruction. An assessment rubric usually contains 6 kinds of information: the criteria, that is the elements of the task you need to include; the descriptors, a detailed description of the criteria at a particular level of performance. You will see it will tell you for content, the student engaged deeply, 5 to 6 marks. The student engaged deeply and criticized and was able to analyze, 6 to 10 marks. The student did 10 to 15 marks. So those are the descriptors. It tells you your level of performance for everything you will do. Then the elements of the criteria: content, language, structure, referencing. You know, what are the different elements, the weightings. Content will take 30%, usually more than that, 40% or 50%. Structure, 20%. Grammar, 10%. Language, 10%. Formatting, 5%. Progression of performance, and so on. So these are the different things that you will usually see in your rubric. So you need to read the rubric of your assignment, become familiar with it, and ask your lecturers anything you don't understand. Remember, that rubric is what they will use to mark. Refer to the rubric as you do your assignment. Once you do your assignment, always go back, check. Did I follow the instructions? Did I do this? In terms of content, where do I fall? Before you hand your assignment, use your rubric to judge your own work. When you get your assignment back, use your marked rubric to understand your feedback. So the rubric is really important. It will tell you what it's in the lecturer's mind and what he or she expects. It will inform you of what excellent looks like. It will allow you to judge your work before you hand it in. It will help you, right, to turn your assessment into a learning event rather than just a measurement of what you know or can do. It will provide basis for your feedback, for the feedback you get. So understanding the feedback or the mark that you got, the rubric will help you for that. And it also assures that the lecturer's marking is more consistent, because that is the same rubric that they will use for all students. So they will use the same rubric for Grace, the same rubric for Nancy, the same rubric for Irene, and so on, and Plum, and so on. So it really ensures consistency as the lecturer marks. So today we have looked at various different aspects of learning. So we looked at how to create a study plan, how to interpret your questions, looking at the task, command words, and delete words. We looked at study tips, how to maximize your memory, recalling your memory retention capacity and your ability to recall information, the different types of assessment, how to get an A grade, what to do and not to do, how to make the most of your feedback, and the importance of your assessment or assignment rubrics. And we have come to the end of today's session. All right, so tomorrow we're going to be looking at critical thinking. We're going to be looking at the mindset. We're going to be looking at group work. Now, group work is something that doesn't work for everyone, but more especially if it doesn't work for you, it's important to attend tomorrow's workshop so you can see the importance of it. And if it's something you can consider, or perhaps you just keep working individually. But as I always say, even with the argumentative essays, it's more beautiful when you know the opposing side, because you're able to say, I hear you because you're saying this, and that, but I reject it because of 1, 2, 3, and 4. So before you disregard something, it's important to understand it fully. So please attend tomorrow's workshop so you can understand how the importance of group work, but how to create effective groups for those who want to study in groups, how to manage your time more effectively, and the importance of critical thinking and how to go about it. Okay. Thank you too very much, Plum. I really appreciate that. Words as such really keeps us going, and you do your best and you look forward to the classes. Thank you, Lerato, for that hand. Really appreciate. For the hearts, thank you, Rifiwe. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend today's workshop. I'm glad that it was useful. Remember, you have the one-on-one sessions. Should you need further explanation, or if you have an assignment and need that individualized attention, you can book through Mr. Kagiso. If you need a copy of the presentation, please send me an email. Just introduce yourself.